The News 4 Rundown starts now.
Thanks for joining us for the News 4 Rundown. I'm Un Yang. Our top story tonight, securing the district for a busy summer. A series of major events tied to the nation's 250th anniversary celebrations promise to bring big crowds and heightened security. That security is likely to include more National Guard troops, even as a new report says there's a limit to their impact on safety in D.C. We'll get to the National Guard conversation in just a moment, but first, News 4's Mauricio Casillas reports on the specialized equipment and resources federal agencies say they'll use to keep the public safe.
The biggest takeaway from federal officials is that this summer will be unlike anything we've experienced in the district in recent memory, just due to the sheer number of major events that will be taking place in the district. I mean, right behind me, you can see preparations underway for the UFC Freedom 250 fight that'll be taking place on the south lawn of the White House. And one of the biggest things that officials say attendees can do is to plan ahead before arriving. Inside the D.C. Armory, federal agencies, including the FBI, U.S. Capitol Police, Park Police, Secret Service, and the D.C. National Guard, came together to showcase the equipment, personnel, and resources that'll help secure these events.
Compared to the cost of a life, we would rather lose a robot than lose a bomb tech. So the aspects of bringing general public into a space with the VIPs makes a challenge for protection, both from Secret Service and for us with public safety, officer safety, of how we protect these events.
Much of this equipment is something law enforcement hopes they'll never need to use, but they're training and preparing to ensure they're ready for any situation.
The vessel on the back is designed to withstand and contain a blast or a detonation from an IED.
The summer's first major event will be the UFC fights at the White House. Then comes the massive 4th of July celebration, followed by the Freedom 250 Grand Prix in August. Each event will require extensive coordination among law enforcement agencies.
At this time, we are not tracking any credible threats to the events of this summer. With that being said, it comes as no surprise to anyone that D.C. on a normal day is a target-rich environment. And we are prepared for any threats, and we will work with our partners to address those.
Hundreds of thousands of people are expected to attend these events, and law enforcement says public awareness will be just as important as the security presence on the ground.
You play a critical role in public safety. I can't emphasize this enough. If you see something, say something.
Another piece of advice is to check the list of prohibited items before you arrive to an event, because you're going to be going through different security checkpoints. So it's good to know what you can have and what you can't. And one thing you might not think about, but if you're coming to an event with your children, officials say take a picture of them in the outfits that they're in the day of. That way, in the event that you happen to get separated from them, you can show that picture to law enforcement, and it makes it that much easier to then reunite with them. Reporting in the district, Mauricio Casillas, News 4.
And we want to hear from you. Which Freedom 250 event are you most looking forward to? The UFC fight, State Fair, 4th of July fireworks, Indy car race, Patriot Games, or none of them? So far, the majority of you, 83%, say none. So head to NBCWashington.com/vote to answer our survey question. The surge of National Guard troops in D.C. has not deterred violent crime. That's according to a new report from a D.C. think tank. Still, President Trump is about to double down on the troops' presence in the district for those 250th anniversary celebrations. Earlier today, News 4's Erica Gonzalez spoke with one of the co-authors of that report on the National Guard, who says the Guard is deterring some crime, but at a cost.
Before we get into what's not working, the report did highlight something, that is, where has the deployment of the National Guard in D.C. been most successful?
So it's hard to say exactly where it's been most successfully geographically, because we don't have a lot of information on actually where National Guard troops are deployed to physically within the city. When we're talking about crime, what crime has been most affected by the National Guard presence, it appears that a lot of their effect, and it is a positive one, I don't want to diminish the work that the National Guard has done to reduce crime, but most of that crime that's been reduced has been low-level property offenses. And it's been a fairly significant reduction in low-level property offenses of about 34%.
But the numbers in the report don't seem to indicate that there's been a change in violent crime as a result of the Guard. Can you tell me sort of the working theory around why that might be?
Yeah, violent crime is really sticky, particularly in big cities like DC that have long histories of entrenched violence. Violence, particularly gun violence, tends to travel along the pathways of interpersonal relationships, whereas the sort of property offenses that are being potentially stopped by the guard presence are mostly opportunistic crimes. They don't necessarily have a specific intended victim. Rather, they have someone has a motivation to perhaps take something from a business or a car, and they're looking for a good opportunity to do that. And when you have more boots on the ground, be they National Guard troops or police officers or whatever uniformed presence you want to talk about, there's fewer opportunities to commit that sort of opportunistic crime with impunity. And so we think that that's the working theory around why the Guard's presence has affected property crime, but maybe not violent crime.
You actually sort of segue into my next question for you when you talk about boots on the ground. And we just saw in Mauricio's reporting the FBI has been working on its plan for America 250 for quite some time. And so there's obviously things that we see and there's a lot of things that we don't see. The National Guard, however, are very visible. Double that number in town to 5,000 as the president aims to do, and that will certainly do that. So what did you find about the cost of Guard deployment and what kind of return the federal government is getting on that investment?
Unfortunately, the Guard cost a considerable amount of money to deploy and maintain in DC. It's, I think, the highest cost per soldier deployment in the country, and that largely reflects DC's high cost of living. So the Guard is a very expensive and forgive me for saying fairly blunt instrument to use against the type of entrenched crime problems that DC has. We run a cost-benefit analysis that suggests that simply increasing the number of police officers would yield a better return on your money. That's a little bit difficult to do. Obviously, MPD has had a long history with having trouble maintaining staff levels. But we also say that you could get even more return for your investment if you took the same number of cops we have now on the street and just simply help them do their jobs better and more safely. We consider that this would probably be an order of magnitude better a return on investment than what you'd see out of the National Guard.
And currently, just to be clear, your report cites over the $1 million mark per day currently of what the government, the administration is allocating towards National Guard presence in the District of Columbia. Is that correct?
Correct. I think we estimate somewhere around $600 per day, a little bit over for a National Guard member versus the average MPD officer costing somewhere between $350 and $400. So it's significantly less expensive to simply hire a new police officer or get more out of the police officers you currently have.
And if you look further down the road, let's say to the 4th of July, all of the days surrounding that big celebration and having an increased presence of National Guard members in and around town, do you think that will do what the president hopes it will?
It's hard to say. Every policy decision is a mix of the numbers, reacting to the data you have, and also considering the politics overplaying the situation. So it's really hard to guide a policymaker to the right decision with just the data. I do want to point out one thing that I think is perhaps contributes to the slightly more positive story about the National Guard, which is a finding that is a little bit buried in our paper, but I consider to be really interesting. And that is that there seems to have been a fairly significant reduction in shot spotter detections when the Guard deployed. And what ShotSpotter is a system of acoustic microphones that pick up and record when a probable gunshot has happened, and it geolocates it, and it allows police to investigate in real time the incident. It also allows police to sort of triangulate where suspects might have been when a crime was committed. But beyond that, it also just gives us a really good measure over time of how many times a gunshot is happening in the city. And when the Guard deployed, and this is something that we have really only basic theories for, when the Guard was deployed, there was a significant reduction in the number of gunshots detected, even though this didn't show up in fewer people necessarily being hurt or killed. So when you look at days like the 4th of July or New Year's. You see days when there is a lot of sort of incidental, perhaps wanton, perhaps negligent discharge of firearms. And it's possible that the National Guard presence may actually reduce that sort of dangerous behavior that doesn't necessarily get recorded in crime stats. So I think there's some reason to feel positive about the National Guard going into the holidays, and about what they can do for safety in DC. I want to again say that they are a very expensive way to combat this problem, and we should be considering less expensive local solutions when possible.
Richard Hahn with the Niskanen Center. Richard, thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks again.
The White House Correspondents' Dinner has been rescheduled. The new date is July 24th at the Waldorf Astoria in D.C. President Trump announced the location and said he will speak at the dinner. The change comes after the shooting at the annual event back in April. The man accused of opening fire that night, Cole Allen, is charged with the attempted assassination of the president. The rescheduled July 24th event will have, quote, significantly enhanced safety measures and new access procedures. The president of the White House Correspondents Association released a statement today that said, quote, we will not allow an act of violence to have the last word, especially during a year when we are reflecting on the 250th anniversary of America and everything we stand for. Still to come tonight on the News4 Rundown, we're taking you back inside the mysterious St. Elizabeth's campus. Once a medical facility at the forefront of technology, the space has sat unused for years. Our Mark Seagraves has the revitalization plans you'll only see on News4. Plus, have you ever left your phone or your wallet, perhaps, behind in an Uber? If you have, you're not alone, but now Uber is out with new data on some of the more interesting items left behind. Amelia, how about our weather?
Here's a look at your evening plan. Our temperatures in the 60s for the majority of the remainder of the evening hours. It'll be comfortably cool tomorrow morning. My full forecast after the break.
Last night, we took you inside two of the historic buildings on the old St. Elizabeth's campus in Southeast D.C. Part of our tour included the infamous Blackburn Laboratory. That is where some of the earliest lobotomy techniques were developed. And tonight, News4's Mark Seagraves shows us what will happen to those abandoned buildings as the sprawling campus undergoes redevelopment.
The 184-acre campus east of the river is bigger than the RFK campus site, but doesn't get near the public attention. Redevelopment has been underway for years, with Care First Arena serving as the anchor. Now, one by one, these beautiful brick buildings are being rehabilitated and repurposed.
It is a massive undertaking, especially of buildings that were constructed in the late 1800s.
Latrina Owens is overseeing the entire project for the D.C. government.
This project is on the National Register. It was put there in 1990, so we are doing our best to preserve and integrate what's old and new together for this community.
Sarah Levitt is a historian who wrote this book, Architecture of an Asylum, about the St. E's campus. Levitt believes the way this campus was built more than 100 years ago speaks to how important the government thought having a place to treat mental illness was back then.
This architecture still kind of looks grand. You can see the windows are giant. The roof, look at the way that the pediment of the roof sits. They were really trying to do something here with the architecture and say, like, we find this important. Anytime you see architecture like this, you know somebody thought it was important to have a look, a feel for this campus that would be beneficial to the folks that worked and lived here.
Brian Burke took us inside Building P, one of the structures his firm is repurposing.
Our firm does a number of historic renovations, but these are by far the coolest buildings that we've been able to work on. Just the history here and the enormity of these really impressive historic buildings is just a lot of fun to work with. It's there's a lot to it. A lot goes into restoring these back to their original brilliance, but it's a really fun challenge.
Burke points out this type of construction and architecture would be way too expensive to do today. But now, these buildings that have been abandoned for years are being returned to the community.
So these two buildings are going to be programmed for nonprofit uses mainly. There will be some community serving spaces, a community center, there'll be workforce development areas, youth services and childcare, and then there'll be some arts uses.
The most infamous building on the campus is the Blackburn Laboratory, where we took you inside, the still intact operating room. Brian Butler's firm is restoring Blackburn.
When you're walking around some of the building and you're really seeing the history that was made here for the research that was done in this building, and just having the opportunity, just picking up, and we looked at some stuff today as you pick things up off the ground, really what was involved in happening with all of those artifacts affected within the building. It's truly gives you the chills.
The renovation of the Blackburn building is going to be historic in a new way. It's actually being lifted up and moved closer to the road.
The building itself is going to be one of the largest moves of anywhere in the country of moving a historical building like this. So hugely opportunity and difficulties at the same time. We have to effectively go underneath the building, jack it into the air, and then slowly, almost like rail tracks, move the building over onto new foundations. The difficulty here is that the new foundations, we'll have to be pouring them as the building are in the air, because the new foundations is going to go underneath the existing footprint. So really complex structural challenges ahead.
It's unclear whether the operating room will be preserved. From the historic St. Elizabeth's campus, Mark Seagraves, News 4.
If you didn't get a chance to see part 1 of the St. Elizabeth's campus tour, you can watch the entire segment on our website. Head to NBCWashington.com and search for St. Elizabeth's. Well, remote work may be having a bigger impact than AI when it comes to the employment rates for younger workers. The study by the Federal Reserve Bank of New York says remote work is responsible for nearly 2/3 of the rise in unemployment for young college grads since the pandemic. The study says jobs that rely heavily on remote workers are less likely to hire new college grads because it is harder to train them from afar. The unemployment rate in the same jobs for people 29 and older actually declined slightly over the same time period in the same study. Have you ever left something behind in an Uber? Usually it's like a wallet, your phone. Well, according to rideshare company, a lot of people in D.C. have. The district ranks 6th among the 10 most forgettable cities. What are riders leaving behind? Top 5 items left behind: phones, wallets, luggage, keys, and headphones. All makes sense, right? Falls out of your pocket, out of your bag. Among some of the most unique items left are dentures with 2 teeth, marbles, live fish. Maybe you went to the pet store and bought some fish and forgot to take it with you. Mannequins. How do you leave a whole entire mannequin in an Uber? And a dishwasher. So many questions. What a beautiful day today, Amelia. Just picture perfect.
I mean, it really was phenomenal.
Yes.
Temperatures were a little bit below normal this evening. Beautiful. Are you ready for the rest of the week?
Okay. I know there's going to be a warm up, right?
Yes.
Okay.
But we're just warming up. We're not really seeing like intense humidity make its way into the area. It'll just start to feel a little bit humid by the weekend. So here's a look at your weather headlines. Gorgeous weather continues, not just tomorrow, but Thursday as well. The heat builds in on Friday with a 90-degree day, and then it's hot and humid on Saturday. By Sunday, it's still hot and humid with some storms likely around. Right now, it looks like storms favor the back half of Sunday, the afternoon and evening hours, but stay tuned as we continue to update that forecast, and the storms on Sunday cool us down for early next week. Our temperatures right now are comfortable: 75 in Washington, 73 in Gaithersburg and Leesburg, 73 degrees in Frederick. Starting off this morning, there was definitely a chill in the air with temperatures in the 40s and 50s, 55 in Washington, 49 in Gaithersburg, 56 in Manassas. So maybe you grabbed that light jacket early this morning. By the afternoon, you did not need it at all. Tomorrow morning, it won't be as cool, but still phenomenal. In fact, overall, the day is going to be a little bit warmer. So we start off 8 a.m. Temperatures in the mid-60s. That's refreshing. By 10 a.m., we're already in the low 70s at 72 degrees. And by lunchtime, we're already warmer than we were the entire day today. So you can see we start to see our temperatures, the heat build a little bit more tomorrow than today with the high of 82. Plenty of sunshine. It is going to be a 10 out of 10 weather-wise. Now, looking ahead to the weekend, it's humid both Saturday and Sunday. 94 for a high on Saturday, 90 on Sunday, with some storms likely on Sunday. Again, mainly later in the day. Some of those storms maybe have some heavy rain, some strong gusty winds, something we'll continue to monitor, but it's not a washout. I wouldn't necessarily change your plans just yet if you do have outdoor plans later on Sunday, but stay tuned to the forecast. If you're heading to the pool on Saturday, absolute perfection. If the kids have sports or you're just trying to get some exercise in, the mornings will be key both Saturday and Sunday. Temperatures this weekend start off in the 70s. Outdoor brunch on Saturday, I think between the heat, humidity, and that storm chance, I would just make the reservations indoors. But if you want a chance at sitting in the shade, going to be quite nice, I think, just because it's starting to feel like summer again around here. Now, as we look to the 10-day forecast, you see that high on Sunday of 90. Those storms on Sunday cool us back down. And yesterday it looked like that storm system could get hung up over our area and kind of continue to give us rain chances. That's not looking like the case anymore. So that storm moves out. We have high temperatures in the upper 70s Monday and Tuesday, mid 80s by Wednesday, next Thursday and Friday. We have a high temperature around 90 degrees.
Thanks, Amelia. Still ahead, there are two things Commanders fans love: seeing Terry McLaurin on the field and affordable food options at Northwest Stadium. Our team insider JP Finley shows us how the two coincided at training camp today in Ashburn. World Cup fever is kicking into high gear. The glittering World Cup trophy is on the U.S. leg of its global tour, stopping in 38 American cities. The DMV is not on the list. The International World Cup teams are also beginning to arrive in the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. The Brazilian squad arrived in New Jersey today. Team Argentina is already here and working out in Kansas City. We have just 9 days to go now until the matches begin. And a reminder, you can watch the World Cup exclusively in Spanish on our sister station, Telemundo 44. Coverage will kick off on June 11th with the opening ceremony in Mexico. Well, what a difference a year makes for Terry McLaurin. The star receiver missed most of the offseason practices last year amid a contract dispute. Remember that? Glad that's over. This season, he is on the field, full steam ahead with the quarterback, Jaden Daniels. Team insider JP Finley has that story from Ashburn.
As the 2026 Commanders look to get back towards the 2024 season, when everything went their way and they went to the NFC title game, there's one obvious difference from the 2025 season. That's Terry McLaurin. Of course, we all remember last year there was a contract situation. Terry wasn't happy, the team wasn't getting it done, and that lingered throughout the entire offseason into training camp. That is no longer the case, and it's pretty obvious. You can see the differences on the field and in the attitudes of the folks involved.
Missing that time, I think, with a young quarterback is extremely important, because although I was going into year 7, Jaden was going into year 2. And our connection is extremely important to build during this time, and that's why we want to jump on it as early as possible. And it's a learning process. Like, obviously, the business side of football is part of the game, and it gets in the way. But now that that's out of the way, we've been able to hit the ground running, and it's allowed us to really work out a lot of early kinks, and we're connecting on a lot of plays early. We've talked through a lot of things. He's texting me on the side. We're just communicating all the time. So when we get to camp, we're expecting it to look a lot more crisp.
Fans seeing Terry McLaurin back on the field for OTAs might bring some smiles, and so might the new food prices the Commanders rolled out for home games this season. Now, it's important to note that the new prices are only for season ticket members, but how about this? The Commanders also rolled out 5 food items under $10. I got to try them all, and I'll give you my rankings. The chicken tenders, number 1. They were nice and tender and moist. They were great. Number 2, the smash burger. It was really good, but I don't know why people put pickles on cheeseburgers. Number 3, the Italian sausage was awesome. The bread was really good, had kind of the onions and peppers you want on there, and really good flavor. Let me know your rankings when you get to Northwest Stadium this fall. Maybe they'll be the same. Covering the Commanders in Ashburn, I'm JP Finley.
Love a chicken tender, and I like pickles on my cheeseburgers, JP. The Commanders also announced they will be doubling the number of season ticket member-only days at training camp. The Commanders have one more set of voluntary practices next week before mandatory minicamp begins on June 16th. And that is going to do it for the News4 Rundown for this Tuesday night. Be sure to join us again tonight for News 4 at 11. For now, I'm Un Yang. Have a great night, everyone.